If you've ever, found yourself staring at a spreadsheet full of numbers, or maybe prepping for a really important meeting, or even just trying to get a complex idea across so people actually get it, that clarity.
Yeah.
Oh, clarity is everything.
It really is. We talk a lot about charisma, connecting emotionally. But today we're diving deep into something more fundamental.
Yeah, the bedrock. We're talking about logos.
That's right. Logos. Aristotle's third pillar of persuasion. It's all about the power of a well-reasoned argument, built on evidence. Character and emotion, they're vital, sure, but logos is what makes your message stick. It gives it weight.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we've pulled together some incredible sources. We're going way back, obviously, to Aristotle's Rhetoric, looking at Cicero's ideas on structuring speeches, Quintilian's practical advice.
Hmm.
But then we're jumping forward, too.
Mm.
We're looking at how figures like Conwell applied this logic in business, how Kahneman studied his pitfalls in psychology,
Yeah.
how Covey used it for personal effectiveness.
Yeah.
It's a really rich mix.
It is, and our mission here is pretty clear, I think. We want to pull out the practical tools from all this wisdom,
Yeah.
show you how to build a case that's clear, coherent, and just logically compelling. Basically, how to make reason itself your most persuasive tool.
Okay, let's unpack this. So Aristotle's big three: ethos, pathos, logos. That's kind of the classic map for persuasion, isn't it? We probably need to start right there, just placing logos in that context.
Absolutely, it's essential. So, Aristotle identifies these three ways persuasion happens through speech. First, you've got ethos. That's about the speaker's character.
Right, making yourself seem trustworthy.
Exactly. Persuasion happens when the speaker comes across as credible, knowledgeable, and having goodwill toward the audience. And interestingly, Aristotle actually says ethos is, quote, just about the most decisive means of persuasion, especially when things are uncertain or disputed.
Wow, most decisive. That's huge. But there's a catch, isn't there?
There is, and it's a big one. This trustworthiness, this ethos, it can't just be based on your existing reputation or, your job title.
Ah,
It has to be demonstrative through the speech itself, right then and there. You have to earn it with your words, your reasoning, how you present yourself in that moment.
got it. So you build your credibility as you speak. Then what's next?
Next up is pathos, the emotional angle. This is all about putting the audience into a certain emotional state or disposition.
Making them feel something.
Precisely. Aristotle was very clear on this. We just don't make judgments the same way when we're, say, feeling grief versus joy or friendliness versus hostility. So the effective speaker needs to understand human emotions and, frankly, use them to nudge the audience toward their viewpoint.
Okay, ethos, pathos, which brings us squarely to logos.
Yes, logos. This is persuasion through the argument itself. It happens when we show something is true, or at least appears true, using persuasive points relevant to the subject. It's the logical engine.
But wait, if Aristotle thought ethos was the most decisive, does that make logos kind of secondary? Or is it more that a strong character just makes people more willing to accept your logic?
That's a really sharp question. It points to this underlying tension, and the roots of this actually go back even further to Plato.
Ah, Plato, so before Aristotle.
Right. In dialogues like Gorgias and Phaedrus, Socrates and Plato draw this really crucial line between conviction based on knowledge and conviction based just on belief.
Okay, knowledge versus belief. What's the key difference there?
Well, if you convince someone through knowledge, that conviction must be true. Knowledge, by definition, reflects reality. 2 plus 2 equals 4.
Right, can't be false.
But if you convince someone based on belief, that belief could be true or
Right.
could be false. Beliefs are opinions, possibilities, things we accept without absolute proof.
I see. And how does this connect back to rhetoric and large audiences?
Well, Plato and Socrates argued, maybe a bit elitistly, that addressing a big mixed crowd often makes real teaching, the kind needed for true knowledge, pretty much impossible. You just don't have the time or the setup for rigorous back and forth.
Right, you can't run a philosophy seminar in a public square.
Exactly. So oratory, especially for mass audiences, often has to aim lower. It aims for conviction based on belief, on what seems probable or plausible, rather than aiming for that harder-to-reach absolute knowledge.
So the goal shifts for the speaker. It's less about proving ultimate truth and more about building a structure that sounds logical, that feels true enough to sway belief.
That's a great way to put it. And Logos gives you the tools to build that structure. Aristotle identifies two primary methods, which he actually saw as rhetorical versions of philosophical logic. They are the enthymeme and the example.
Okay, enthymeme, that sounds technical. What is it?
It's often called the rhetorical syllogism. You know how a formal syllogism in logic has like two premises leading to a conclusion?
Yeah, like, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal.
Right. The enthymeme is similar, but it's usually shorter, more condensed. Often, one of the premises, usually the big general one that everyone sort of accepts, is left unstated.
Ah, so you let the audience fill in the blank.
Exactly. The enthymeme happens when, given certain facts, something else seems to follow, either always or most of the time. If you argue, he must be guilty, his fingerprints were on the weapon, you're using an enthymeme.
Because the missing premise is?
The missing premise, which the audience instantly supplies, is people whose fingerprints are on a murder weapon are likely guilty. Aristotle noted that speeches packed with good enthymemes get a strong reaction because the audience is actively participating in the reasoning.
Makes sense. They feel smart for connecting the dots.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the enthymeme. What about the example?
The example is basically rhetorical induction. Instead of going from a general rule down to a specific case, like the enthymeme often does, you go the other way.
So, specific cases building up to a general idea.
Precisely. You show something is likely true by pointing to a number of similar specific instances where it was true. Think of arguing for a policy change by showing 3 other cities where that exact change worked well.
Okay, like case studies.
Yeah, essentially, you build your case piece by piece, example by example. Aristotle found these speeches very persuasive, too, because examples are concrete, they're relatable, people can easily grasp them.
Right. Now, you mentioned earlier that logos deals with what appears true. Does that mean logic can be faked in rhetoric?
Unfortunately, yes. And Aristotle was keenly aware of this. He talked about the apparent enthymeme. It's something that looks and sounds like a solid argument, like a logical conclusion is being drawn, but it's actually flawed if you examine it closely.
How did that work? Is it just tricky wording?
It can be. Sometimes it's about the structure. Maybe the speaker arranges their points very neatly, uses balanced phrases, or delivers a final sentence with the tone of a conclusion, even if the logical steps weren't really there.
Ah, so the form over substance trick.
Kind of. The listener gets the feeling of logic, the rhythm of it, and they might not stop to check if the underlying reasoning actually holds water. It's a powerful and sometimes dangerous aspect of rhetoric.
That's a really important point. Logic and persuasion isn't just about being right. It's about constructing something that feels right and sound to the audience.
Exactly. Structure matters immensely.
Okay, so its structure is key. How did thinkers after Aristotle develop this? How do you actually build the architecture of a logical argument?
Well, the Romans, especially Cicero, really systematized this. Cicero broke down the whole process of creating effective oratory into what he called the 5 members or canons of eloquence.
5 steps.
Sort of 5 essential skills or stages. First is invention. That's finding what to say, gathering all your facts, your arguments, your proofs, basically figuring out your raw material.
Okay, the research and brainstorming part.
Right. Then comes disposition or arrangement. This is crucial for logos organizing all that material in the most logical and effective sequence, how you structure it.
Got it. Invention, then disposition. What else?
Then you have elocution or style, choosing the right words, phrasing things effectively, adding ornamentation. After that comes memory, being able to recall your points.
Which was huge before teleprompters.
Absolutely. And finally, delivery, the actual performance, voice, gesture. But for logos, those first 2, invention and disposition, are the absolute foundation. You can't have a logical argument without good points arranged clearly.
And Cicero also talked about the aims of a speech, right?
Yeah, he did. He outlined 3 main goals for the orator. First, conciliation, winning over the audience's goodwill, which ties back to ethos. Second, moving their emotions, that's pathos.
And the third must be logos.
Exactly. He called it teaching the Latin is docentior. This is where you present your evidence, lay out your reasoning, provide the proof. It's the logical core of the speech.
So Cicero gives us the overall framework. Who helps with the nitty-gritty structure, especially for arguments?
For that, Quintilian is invaluable. He was a famous Roman teacher of rhetoric, writing a bit later, in the 1st century AD. He gave a very clear blueprint for how to structure a formal argument, particularly a forensic or courtroom speech.
Okay, what did that look like?
He typically divided it into 5 parts. You start with the exordium, the introduction, designed to get attention and make the audience receptive.
Hook them in.
Right. Then the narratio or statement of facts, you lay out the story, the background, what happened, clearly and concisely.
Okay.
Third comes the confirmatio or proof. This is where you build your case, present your arguments, your evidence. This is prime logos territory.
Makes sense. The constructive part.
Then, crucially, the refutatio, or refutation. Here, you anticipate and tear down your opponent's arguments. Also requires sharp logic.
Right. Got a flaw defense, too.
And finally, the peroratio, or conclusion. You summarize your key points, maybe make a final emotional appeal, leave a strong, lasting impression.
That structure seems really logical in itself. Where does planning the flow fit in?
Quintilian emphasized something called the partitio, or partition. This often comes right after the statement of facts. It's where you explicitly tell the audience, okay, here are the 3 main points I'm going to prove.
Like a roadmap for the argument.
Exactly. It makes the logical structure transparent. The audience knows where you're going, which helps them follow the steps of your reasoning. It's all about clarity.
And you mentioned proof and refutation. Constructive and destructive arguments.
Yes. Both rely heavily on logos. The proof uses entymemes and examples to build your case, brick by brick. The refutation uses logic just as much, but its aim is to dismantle the other side, showing their premises are wrong, their reasoning is flawed, their evidence is weak.
It sounds like a lot of this comes down to finding the right logical points to make.
It absolutely does, and often the most powerful arguments aren't based on some grand universal principle, but on the specific, unique details of the situation itself. The Greeks had a term for this. Peristasis.
Peristasis. Arguments from circumstances.
Exactly. These are arguments drawn from facts that are unique to this particular case, things that happened before, during, or after the event in question. They're powerful because they're concrete and directly relevant.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Our sources mention a great one from Roman law involving bankers. Apparently, there was a law that said bankers only had to pay back half of what they owed.
Wow, nice perk for bankers.
Right. But the law also explicitly stated that bankers could recover the whole amount owed to them.
Okay. So how does peristasis come in?
Imagine a banker is suing someone else, maybe not another banker, for full repayment of a loan. The defendant might try to argue, hey, bankers only deal in half amounts.
Right.
But the banker's strongest logical argument comes directly from the specific wording of that law, the circumstance. The fact that the law needed to specify bankers could recover the whole implies that recovering the whole amount is the standard rule for everyone else.
I see. The specific exception proves the general rule for others.
Precisely. The logic hinges entirely on that unique detail of the law's phrasing. It's not a general principle about fairness. It's derived from the specific peristasis. That kind of argument, rooted in the unique facts, can be incredibly strong.
That really highlights how logos isn't just abstract logic, but applying reason to specific contexts, like laws. Which brings us back to Aristotle's idea about different kinds of law.
Yes, exactly. Aristotle made a key distinction between particular law and common law.
Okay, what's the difference?
Particular law is the set of rules created by a specific community or state. It can be written down, like statutes or constitutions, or it could be unwritten custom. It's specific to that group.
Like the laws of Athens or Rome or the U.S. today.
Right. But then there's common law. For Aristotle, this wasn't just precedent, but something deeper, the unwritten law that comes from nature. It's the sense of justice and injustice that he believed all people recognize naturally, regardless of local laws.
So a kind of universal moral law.
Sort of. A natural sense of right and wrong. And the classic example used to illustrate this clash is Sophocles' play Antigone.
Yes. Antigone defied King Creon's order.
She did. Creon issued a particular law forbidding anyone from burying her brother, Polynices, who he deemed a traitor. But Antigone buried him anyway. Her argument, her logos, was based on common law, on natural justice. She argued that the unwritten divine laws commanding respect for the dead and duty to family were higher and more fundamental than Creon's temporary decree.
So she used logic based on natural principles to challenge a specific written law.
Exactly. It shows how logos can be used not just to interpret or apply existing rules, but potentially to critique them by appealing to deeper, perhaps more universal principles of reason and justice.
Okay, so we've seen logos in philosophy, in law, in the structure of argument. But how does this ancient concept play out in, say, the modern world? Like in business or just achieving goals?
Oh, it's incredibly relevant. The logic of success, you could call it. Take Russell H. Conwell, the guy famous for the Acres of Diamonds speech. He had this very clear logical premise about business success.
Which was?
Basically, that the foundation of business success and the foundation of, well, he called it godliness, but we could say ethics or service, are exactly the same.
So good ethics is good business, logically.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
He put it bluntly. If someone says they can't be ethical in their business dealings, Conwell argued, that person is logically advertising themselves as one of three things: an imbecile in business, or on the road to bankruptcy, or a thief.
Wow. That's pretty direct logic.
It is. And he had this great story about himself as a young man working in his father's country store. Farmers kept asking for jackknives.
Okay.
And young Conwell just kept saying, nope, don't have them, and didn't think anything of it. He completely missed the logical point.
Which was?
The logical failure wasn't just not stocking the knives, it was failing to recognize and respond to a clear, expressed need from the community he was supposed to be serving. The logic of business, for Conwell, was service. By ignoring the demand, he was logically demonstrating he didn't understand his role, which was to serve the community and, in turn, earn their business.
So the logical consequence of not serving the need is failure.
Exactly. It connects directly to what Earl Nightingale talked about later. He argued that prosperity isn't random, it's based on a fundamental law of mutual exchange.
Mutual exchange.
Yeah. Nightingale's point was, no man can get rich himself unless he enriches others. Money, in this view, isn't the goal, it's just the measure, the yardstick of the quality and quantity of service you provide to others.
So if you want more success, logically, you need to provide more value.
That's the core logic. More value out, more value back. And this same kind of structural logic applies to setting personal goals.
How so?
Well, Nightingale also defined success not just as having stuff, but as the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. The key word there is realization. It implies a plan, a structure, a logical progression towards a defined goal.
You need a clear target to move towards logically.
Precisely. Which leads us to Stephen Covey and the power of a mission statement.
Ah, the personal mission statement.
Right. Covey advocated writing down a personal or organizational mission statement based on what he called correct principles, fundamental truths, like fairness, integrity, service. This statement becomes your constitution, your supreme logical premise.
Your guiding logic.
Exactly. Covey said it provides four things: security, guidance, wisdom, and power. It's the unchanging compass you use to evaluate everything else. Every decision, every action gets measured against that core logic. Without it, you're just reacting. There's no coherent direction.
That sounds a lot like Simon Sinek's idea of start with why.
It's very connected. Sinek argues that truly influential leaders and organizations communicate their purpose, their core belief, their WHY first. The what, the products, the services comes later.
Why does that order matter logically?
Because, Sinek argues, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The what is just the tangible proof of your underlying cause or belief. When your actions, the what, are logically consistent with your stated purpose, the WHY, you build trust and loyalty. It's logos creating connection.
So consistency is key. What happens when that logical consistency breaks down, especially in big organizations?
Well, then you can fall into what some business thinkers call the doom loop.
The doom loop sounds ominous.
It is. It's observed in companies that fail to build sustained momentum. Think of companies like, historically, Warner Lambert or Bethlehem Steel studied in this context. They get stuck.
How? What does the loop look like?
It's characterized by frantic, reactive decision-making, constant lurch and thrash. Maybe they try massive diversification one year, then abruptly sell everything off and refocus the next. Or they bring in a new CEO who immediately dismantles the previous strategy, regardless of its merits.
So no consistent direction, just zigzagging.
Exactly. It's a fundamental failure of sustained logical commitment. If your core strategy, your central premise, keeps changing, you never build momentum. You never get that compounding effect, the flywheel effect, where consistent effort in a clear direction builds incredible power over time.
The doom loop is essentially organizational incoherence, a failure of logos at the strategic level.
Precisely. It shows that clear, consistent logic isn't just for arguments. It's essential for building anything lasting.
Okay, this makes a lot of sense. Logos provide structure, consistency, a path forward.
Yeah.
But if it's so powerful, why do we mess it up so often? Why do we make illogical choices or fail to communicate logically?
Well, that brings us to the pitfalls. And often, it's not because the logic itself is too hard, but because our brains are kind of lazy. This is where Daniel Kahneman's work on thinking systems comes in.
System 1 and System 2, right?
Exactly. System 1 is our fast, intuitive, automatic thinking. It's effortless, emotional. System 2 is our slow, deliberate, analytical thinking. It takes effort.
And the problem is?
The problem is what Kahneman calls the law of least effort. Our brains prefer to use System 1 whenever possible. System 2, the logical checking system, often just goes along with whatever intuitive answer System 1 throws up without doing the hard work of actually verifying it.
And just rubber stamps the gut feeling.
Pretty much. The classic example is the bat and ball puzzle. You've probably heard it. A bat and ball costs $1 a day in total. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost?
Okay, hang on. The intuitive answer that jumps out is 10 cents.
Right, that's System 1 shouting. But if the ball is 10 cents and the bat is $1 more, the bat is $1.10. Together, that's a $1 tune, not $1.10.
Right. Okay, need to slow down. Use System 2. If the ball is 5 cents, the bat is $1.05. That adds up to $1.10.
Exactly. But getting there requires overriding that initial intuitive wrong answer. Saying 10 cents means System 2 didn't bother to engage and check the math.
Laziness leads to logical error.
So our own mental shortcuts can sabotage our logic. Are there other biases like that?
Oh, plenty. Kahneman also highlighted things like insensitivity to prior probability or base rate neglect.
Base rate neglect.
Yeah. This happens when we judge how likely something is based on how much it matches a stereotype, what Kahneman calls representativeness, while completely ignoring the actual underlying statistics, the base rate.
Can you give an example?
Sure, the Linda problem is famous. You're told Linda is 31, single, outspoken, very bright, majored in philosophy, concerned with discrimination and social justice, and participated in anti-nuclear demonstrations. Okay, sounds like a specific type.
Great. Then you're asked, which is more probable? 1, Linda is a bank teller. Or 2, Linda is a bank teller and is active in the feminist movement.
Well, option 2 seems to fit the description much better.
Exactly. That's what most people say. But logically, it cannot be more probable. Why? Because the group feminist bank tellers is a subset of the larger group bank tellers.
Right. All feminist bank tellers are bank tellers, but not all bank tellers are feminists, so the first group has to be bigger or equal.
Precisely. But our System 1 jumps at the stereotype match, representativeness, and ignores the basic logic of sets. Similarity trumps statistics in our intuitive mind.
Okay, so we have internal logical pitfalls. What about when we're trying to use logos with other people?
That's where another huge pitfall comes in, failure of diagnosis. This is central to Stephen Covey's work on interpersonal communication.
Diagnosis, like a doctor.
Kind of. Covey's principle is stark. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. He argues that your logic, your brilliant advice, your logos, is basically useless if you haven't first taken the time to truly understand the other person's perspective and built some trust, dealt with pathos and ethos first.
So don't jump straight to the solution.
Exactly. But that's what we usually do, right? Someone comes to us with a problem and we immediately jump in with, well, here's what you should do. We advise, we evaluate, we probe with our questions, all based on our frame of reference.
We try to fix it based on our logic.
Yes, without genuinely listening empathically first, listening to understand their feelings, their viewpoint, their world. Covey uses a powerful example of a father and his teenage son.
How does that go?
The son says something like, "Dad, I'm sick of school. It's a drag. I'm not learning anything useful." The dad, maybe well-intentioned, jumps in with his own logic. "What do you mean you're sick of school? You need an education. When I was your age." He dismisses the feeling and imposes his solution.
Yeah, I can see how that would shut the conversation down.
Totally. The son feels unheard, misunderstood. He probably clams up, says, "Oh, never mind." The father's attempt at logos, his advice, his reasoning completely failed because he skipped the crucial first step, empathic listening. He didn't diagnose the real issue from the son's perspective. No ethos, no pathos connection, so the logos falls flat.
Seek first to understand. That seems like a fundamental logical principle for communication itself.
It really is. It's about gathering the right premises before you start building your argument.
So bringing this all together, what's the ultimate test or application of logos?
Perhaps the ultimate test is applying logic when things go wrong, when you face adversity. It's easy to be logical when things are smooth, but great thinkers, great individuals apply logos to trials. They don't just react emotionally, they try to understand and reframe.
Reframing. How does that work logically?
Reframing is essentially changing the logical premise you're operating from. Instead of seeing a setback purely as a negative, this is a disaster, you logically redefine it as something else, maybe an opportunity to learn, a chance to practice resilience, or a call to change direction.
So you change the narrative using logic.
Exactly. You look at the obstacle and say, okay, this happened. What's the most constructive logical interpretation I can place on this? How can this obstacle become the path forward? This logical reframing helps manage the negative emotions, the pesos, and allows you to act more effectively. It turns misfortune into a kind of advantage, logically speaking.
That's powerful. So this whole exploration shows logos isn't just about winning debates or sounding smart. It's structural, it's about consistency, it's about clear thinking, even under pressure.
Absolutely. It demands clear arrangement, like Cicero and Quintilian showed us. It requires a kind of moral consistency, like Conwell argued for in business. And it needs self-awareness to avoid those cognitive pitfalls Kahneman identified.
Whether you're crafting a legal argument, writing that mission statement Covey talked about, or just trying to truly understand someone before you offer advice, you need that foundation of coherent, consistent reason.
It's the bedrock.
Okay, let's try to leave our listeners with a final thought on this. Earlier, we talked about Aristotle's distinction between particular law, the written rules of the society, and common law, that sense of natural justice.
Right.
Consider how that plays out when you're challenging deeply embedded structures that seem logical but might violate that deeper natural reason. Think about the work of someone like Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
A fascinating example.
For years, she challenged hundreds of U.S. laws that treated men and women differently. Many people, including judges, thought these laws were logical, even benign, maybe based on stereotypes about protecting women. That was the accepted particular law logic.
Right, based on prevailing assumptions.
But Ginsburg's argument, her logos, was relentlessly focused on a deeper principle: equality. She argued consistently that any differential treatment based purely on sex should be inherently suspect under the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. She drew parallels to rulings against racial discrimination, like Loving v. Virginia.
So she was using consistent logical application of a core principle, equality, to challenge the flawed logic embedded in specific laws.
Exactly. Her logos wasn't just about the letter of one law, but about the consistent application of a fundamental principle across the entire legal landscape. Even when writing dissents, she was appealing logically to the intelligence of a future day, as she put it.
That really demonstrates the power of sustained, principled, logical argument to challenge entrenched beliefs and ultimately achieve progress. Its logos appealing to common reason against flawed particular structures.
It's profound.
Sure.
So the question we want to leave you, the listener, with is this. Reflecting on all this, where in your own life, maybe in your work or your personal thinking, are you perhaps settling for belief? You know, that easy, intuitive system one assumption that just feels right. And where instead should you be demanding knowledge, that more rigorous, structured, checked, logically sound understanding that requires real system two effort? Where can you apply logos more effectively in your own thinking?